All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of Leverage Lane here on the Ship It Nation YouTube station, PGA DFS edition. This week, talking all things RBC, Canadian Open. You know, your favorite Canadian here. Love to chat that through. I got my guy Alex Blickle here with me as always, and it's going to be a fun one because this is a course we only just saw last year for the PGA Tour, so we're going to talk a little bit about how that can affect things. We've got some weather to discuss for this week. We're going to break down the chalk build, what that looks like. Seems to be a couple paths that we can go there, so definitely stick around for that. And then, of course, we'll always talk about our way and how we're going to leverage the chalk build, leading to one and done conversation, betting breakdown, and then finally, we'll give you our leverage lane from a single entry perspective for DFS this week. Alex, my friend, what's going on, man? We're moving and shaking. We got the RBC Canadian Open, and then next week, same time, same place, we'll be back, just so everybody knows, here for the U.S. Open. And then Mayo, you, and myself will also be doing a show for the U.S. Open as well. But what's going on, my friend? How you doing?
Yeah, it's a fun time of year right now with the U.S. Open coming up, and still trying to get those tickets. Came really close last night in the MLB streets. Just barely missed a big ticket for baseball and the big ticket for the U.S. Open. But it's been a really good baseball run lately, so enjoying that as well as the golf. And yeah, I think this is a week where, like, I don't know how you feel about TPC Toronto. We can actually talk about that and the event, but like, I think the event has really suffered, but from a DFS perspective and just from like a solving the puzzle perspective, trying to find an edge type of perspective, I think it kind of works really well, because now we're playing a course that we just saw last year. We have data on it, and yet there's also like this big new variable this year of it's going to be really, really windy.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, and we'll get to that stuff in a second. But I definitely think from a DFS perspective, I talked about this with Mayo this week, is like it's sometimes the week before a major, you can definitely get a lazy week. And like even like the first lineup when Mayo and I built it, he was like, man, that lineup sucks. I was like, well, that's not everybody thinks that. That's going to be a pretty popular lineup, or at least some range of that. And he was like, yeah, well, then it could be a good week for that perspective. And I like weeks like this. So us breaking through and going down through the puzzle will definitely be some fun. I'll say what's up to Jason, Timmy Dubs, Go Collect, Wins a Lot, Rat Pack. My man Rick is in here, and Stat, you know this. I'm, always get framed for this. I am Canadian, but I'm certainly cheering more for the U.S. Open next week, just like when it comes down to hockey and all the stuff people hate on me for. Like, I'm very Canadian. I love my country, but I get excited for the American stuff. Excited for World Cup, too, by the way. And nobody ever hears me say that ever, but I love World Cup. I love anything where it's countries versus countries and things like that. So Gary is in here. Hutch Dog is up here. Doesn't get to listen live often, which is awesome. And then with you being Canadian, you can only pick one Canadian to win. Who you rooting for? Let's go with
whoever he puts in his DraftKings lineup.
That's probably the answer, really. But I'm just trying to think of like who else is down there. But I don't know. It'd probably be like Nick Taylor or Yella would be the most exciting. Pat was liking AJ Ewert and going through some of those. But I don't know. Nick Taylor again would be cool. And I also think Yella has been sort of just finding his way through some of these fields. So that could be exciting as well. But where do you want to start here? Anything from last week you want to touch on first? And then getting to it for this week, I will just say from a satellite perspective, because we were talking about getting into the event next week, the big 44-44 mega. I did not get any tickets yet, but there is some 245 with, I don't know if it's 5 or 10. I think it's 5 tickets. So it's it's $245 buy-in. There's a bunch of 37s and 70s and 13s and everything. So I'm certainly glad I saved some budget for this week on the satellites, because it's going to be a big satellite week for me.
Yeah, definitely going to be hitting the satellites hard. And like I said, hitting them every single day this week. They've done a nice job finally this week of putting some of those PGA satellites in the MLB streets. I don't know why they're not doing that like all season long. We keep having this discussion. It's really been frustrating, but at least they're doing it this week. So give them props when they do. And hopefully everyone out there is playing those pretty aggressively and filling those early, so that maybe DraftKings goes, oh boy, the people really want these contests. Maybe we should give it to them.
Maybe our people hit up the reps when we told them last time, because we're starting to see a little bit more action. I'm not sure how much a JT Poston versus Ryan Gerard playoff led to like, let's get some bigger tournaments out there next week or get some more satellites. But any final thoughts or anything on last week that you wanted to discuss before we move into this week? I do think there's going to be, I will say this, I do think there's going to be some recency bias, and it's based on, they also fit the course too, probably when we get there, we'll see. But like Wyndham, Clark, Sam Burns, Fleetwood, Fitzpatrick, Wrighton, Cole, there's other guys down that list, Norin, Rose, maybe offsets and like secondary ownership. But realistically, it looks like there's going to be a lot of those guys that just get carried over. And that's part of my thoughts around the lazy week, is just bringing Memorial immediately to TPC Toronto.
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing that in the ownership. I mean, I'm looking right now at just like, okay, who are the guys that we have projected as the highest owned, particularly in single entry. And yeah, they were all top 10 at the Memorial, and most of them to the credit of the field. Like most of these guys, it's not like they only played well last week. These guys have been in form, and so it's not a surprise to see them getting so much ownership. I wouldn't even say that it's inefficient for these guys to get this much ownership, but it's also like there's so much going to just a handful of players that there are a lot of under-owned guys this week, and that's going to be a kind of a fun puzzle to kind of work through.
Yeah, that's what I want to see when we get to breaking down the chalk build for this week and what we see. I'm curious to see where you've got the ownership at. I will say another just factor, and spoiler alert, or jumping ahead a little bit, but have you ever seen, we've done this every week almost now, I think maybe every week, and realistically, it's always been like, oh, nobody's going to the 8K range. Nobody's going to the 8K range. This is the first week we're finally seeing it where like everybody is going to the 8K range, and that'll be something we break down when we get to the chalk build, or at least versions of it. And then obviously how to leverage the chalk build is looking at some of that stuff where maybe the 9K is completely overlooked, or different skill sets and things like that. So just talking about it this week, before we get to weather and getting right into this event, what about the thought process around, only seeing 1 year of this event and only one class that played it? Like this is the one group of players that played it last season. This year's a bit different from that perspective. There's so many factors I'm thinking about that are going into it, weather maybe being different or things changing. But how do you sort of view that? And then how do you apply it when it comes to DFS?
So where I'll start with this answer is let's remember what happened in round 1 at the PGA Championship at Aronimink, where like there was a hugely negative signal on distance. But when you kind of looked at the data and you said, well, why was distance so ridiculously unpredictable in round 1? You saw that there was just like this random trend where the longest guys in the field putted really poorly and the shortest guys in the field putted really well. And obviously there's no causation there. There's nothing that says, oh, you know what? Long guys are really going to struggle on the greens this week. And so when you're looking at just 1 year's worth of data, it's better than 1 round's worth, but there is still a really small sample where in predictive analysis, you can get some just kind of random chaotic outcomes that point you in an incorrect direction, where, maybe really good short game players just didn't putt well or really struggled off the tee, one thing or another, right? Where something that the model's telling you that like this skill set did or did not translate into success wasn't actually about that skill set, and it was just about some random effect elsewhere. And so we do want to be on the lookout for that sort of thing. But one of the best ways to combat that is to have an idea, an expectation for the golf course coming in, and then seeing how that aligns with your priors. And so it's very Bayesian in the sense that like you're trying to kind of move what you saw towards your initial prior, and the more data you get, the further you get from your priors, and the more you can let go of those priors. But the nice thing about TPC Toronto is we did see the course kind of fit what my expectation for the golf course was, which was, even though it's long, it's not a distance golf course. It's an accuracy golf course. The width of the fairways, I think the best way to put it is that they're wide enough that the accurate guys are just going to give themselves opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to go score. And that's what we saw play out last year. The new difficulty now, though, as we alluded to earlier with the wind, is like the conditions are going to be so different this year that I'm kind of struggling a little bit in terms of how much do I really want to lean on last year, and how do I think the wind is going to change things? There's definitely a lot of uncertainty in that. I think that, well, first of all, let me just say that, like, this was a unique course fit model in the sense that distance, approach play, and around the green play were all way down in predictive value. Around the green play was like insanely unpredictable last year. I think we will see more predictive value for approach play and around the green play with the wind, just because it's going to create harder scoring conditions. You're really going to have to control your golf ball on your approach shots, things of that nature. I don't think we're going to see more distance signal than we saw last year. I think it's still very much an accuracy golf course. The one place where that could change is if the wind direction, and this is something I still want to look into, of like, okay, are we getting a consistent wind direction? And what does that wind direction mean for the golf course? Is it consistently into the wind on par fives, where now suddenly like only the long guys are going to be able to get there in two, things of that nature? So I think it would take a really like just perfect scenario run out where day after day, the wind is in a direction and a strength where distance is just like the perfect amount of necessary to make it a lot more predictive than last year. But in general, windier conditions do not boost predictive value for distance.
Yeah, so you're going to have a list too that's interesting, because when you start to break it down from that perspective, there's some guys that fit both buckets. Like surprisingly, for me, just doing a quick glance, is like the Bobby Max, the Brennans of the world, guys like that kind of have both of those in their bag. And you think like, oh, just like Brennan just bombs it out there, but it's been accuracy as well. So maybe that's possible. But there's a lot of names on that list when you sort by sort of driving accuracy, looking at it, of guys that aren't as popular this week, like Colin Morikawa or something like that. And we'll get to that later. Obviously, the 9K range going overlooked. Do you want me to pull in the weather now and start there and maybe tie that together with everything you just mentioned? That might be the best way to bring it in. I think that'll refocus and then set you up there. But you've got it up. I'll let you sort of run through it here for everybody and go through what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so I always like looking at kind of all the models, because I'm trying to create a picture of like what are all of the possible runouts of the weather. And this is a week where they all kind of agree. And one of the things you'll notice as I kind of scroll through here is every model is sort of saying the same thing, which is we're going to get really windy conditions. Usually really windy conditions opens the opportunity for some pretty big wave splits. But notice that like these are all saying the wind is going to be up. It's going to be up and consistent all day, every day, where we probably don't need to talk too much about wind splits. I think, anytime you have weather this severe, you can blindly play a wave stack and just kind of hope it breaks in your favor. So certainly not opposed to those wave stacks, but it just seems pretty clear that like we are going to get these windier, difficult conditions. It's going to be windy all day. We can take a quick look at direction here. We get a west wind, I should say, and then another west wind. And so it looks like it's going to be pretty consistent from the west all week long, at least according to this model. So yeah, like I think it seems like every player is playing in the exact same conditions over and over again, and it's just about who's going to deal with those best. And so I'm definitely going to lean into wind splits this week. But as far as it changes the course fit model, like I don't think it changes it much, except for we probably see more approach and around the green signal than we saw last year. But the general theme here is still the field is not going to care enough about accuracy, and the field is going to care too much about distance just based on the length of the golf course and the width of the golf course.
Yeah. Let me swap this out then and pull this up real quick, and then I will swap over. We can look at sort of what you're seeing as the common or the chalk build, if you will. I mentioned it earlier, so I already hinted at it some, but I think, like I said, the 8K range, and this is just our initials again. Last week had a few different changes to it that we talked about. By the way, Scotty last week doing that was just, we had it pegged on the show, and then I still went against it too and brought him way back down, and then he went back up, and it kind of messed everything up. But it's just one of those weeks where when Scotty's in there, it's always a little bit extra tricky to figure out. It still turned out good overall, but the Scotty move, going back to day one of you bringing it up, of like the combinatorial ownership and then how things change and how much like one move can matter for your entire ownership projections. Way off on him, way off on who was the other guy? Somebody else got steamed last week. There was somebody else that got really steamed last week that was like a bit surprising, off by like 5 or 6% from most places. But after that, it was kind of good up the middle. So that was nice. But mentioned it earlier, the 8K range here, whether it's, Cole, Taylor, Rye, Fitzpatrick, Wrighton, definitely going to be popular. I mean, these guys are all showing up. What are you sort of seeing coming into this one as the chalk build, if you will?
Pretty much exactly what you just mentioned. I mean, the 8K range is loaded with chalk. We've got Wrighton at 30, Alex Fitzpatrick at 20%, Rye around 30%, Cole near 25%, Cauley near 20%. And then up top, it does look like Tommy's kind of going to separate and be his own level of chalk. But then you also have Burns and Wyndham Clark at 20, Fitzpatrick at 16. And I think the main thing that's worth pointing out, also Nikolai at like 16.5%. But I think the biggest thing to point out here is there's a very clear top tier of player here where I think DraftKings really could have moved Fitzpatrick, Fleetwood, Burns, and Morikawa to upper 10Ks, even low 11Ks, leaving everyone else where they're at. And it would have been a much more interesting decision at the top, and maybe the low 9K range would have gotten more ownership. But right now, it's just so easy to start with Tommy, then go hammer the 8K range. And you're only going to need like 2 7K guys to do that. You can go one 6K guy and then get a fifth 8K guy if you'd like. So I definitely think we're going to see the 8K range just loaded up on. And the interesting thing here is like, it's probably something at 95% of the time, my lineup is more balanced than the average field lineup. And this week, the field lineup, the chalk build is a really, really balanced build. And so it's going to be very interesting to see kind of how we end up wanting to pivot off of it. Are we going to studs and duds for like the first time all year when the field is on a balanced build, or are we trying to find our own version of a more balanced build where maybe we're hammering like the low 9K range, something like that? So very, very interested in talking through this with you, because at the moment, I don't have my answer yet.
Yeah, I think you've nailed sort of the setup of it though here. Like I pick your poison. Like some people are going to go Putnam, Pockgeiter, Finau, whatever they end up going based on projections. I guess my point is like this gives a real nice 420 right there for the 420 folks. I know Go Collect said 69 watching. Noise yesterday, by the way, 6-7 was on Sunday. 6-9 was yesterday, June 9th. So the dates are falling in line as well. But it's something like this just shows that the 3-8K guys should be pretty prevalent even in a Fleetwood lineup. And I know like you've talked about this a ton, but just to rehash it, not everybody watches every week. Like someone says, okay, I'm going to do this then. I'm going to go to like Alec Fitz, and then I'm going to get Wyndham. Nobody will do this because that puts a 6K player in there. It's like, yeah, your Wyndham and one guy are different, but like your other 4 are so popular with everything else. Yeah, but it's 4 8Ks instead of 3. It's still so mixed into what everybody else is doing. Doesn't mean it can't work. Obviously, anything can win. Hashtag Kevin Garnett. Anything is possible. People know that one. But this is the setup of like, we can find ways to get different off of this. And I think one of the most interesting things you said, I mean, there's another quick build, and then I'll go to what you said. What you said was like how we could maybe go stars and scrubs, and that's kind of my thoughts. But just to note it, what you know about PGA Tour U #1 Ben James? This guy is projecting everywhere as somewhat decent, and in the models and sims and things like that. When you pull him out of them, he is popping into these things, but it kind of lands you on the perfect. Like if Bud Cauley was to get in with those guys, you mentioned him right away. I think he definitely is getting. And again, I don't love this lineup, I'm saying, but I think that people are going to find this or some very similar variation, right? It's like, oh, I won't play Ryan Fleetwood because they're going to be too popular, but I'll play the next most popular guy like Wyndham Clark, and I'll throw in, Fitzpatrick, and then maybe I can take Ben James up to 7K flat, right? Somebody, whoever you want to mention there, whether it's Eckroat, I think Mayo was talking about yesterday that he liked. There's Suber, there's other guys there. You see how these all project very similarly, but they all still leave 2 to 3 8K guys and mostly 3 8K guys.
Yeah, let's talk about Ben James for a minute, because I think he's like an interesting kind of case study, not just on should we be using him this week, but also just I think talking about him will give people a better understanding of how a lot of projection models work, why he's projecting well, and why that might be a little bit misleading. The thing to notice is the vast majority of his events where we're still getting signal, right? Like we don't get data from everything he does on or in his college events, but we are still learning about how good he is in those college events. And we can compare how his college performance compares to like Luke Clinton's and other really good young guys over the last few years who then get PGA starts. But in terms of starts where he had shot link data, there are only 3 this year, or 3 since the start of last year: the Valero Texas Open last year, the US Open last year, the John Deere last year. In 2 of those 3 events, his ball striking was phenomenal. It was neutral at the John Deere. It was phenomenal at the U.S. Open. He putted really poorly and missed the cut. It was phenomenal at the Valero. He finished 33rd, putting really, really poorly, like losing almost 2 strokes per round. So what most of these projection models are doing is they're saying, when I look at a player, the skills that are going to continue into the future are ball striking, particularly off the tee, but then iron play as well. And putting is more likely to change from the past into the future. So when it sees a guy who's extreme in the sense that like his ball striking is his strength, his putting is his weakness, it's going to give that guy a big boost relative to like the observed strokes gained from that player. The problem with that is it's only a 3-event sample. And in those 3 events, he only played 8 rounds. And so you're only getting 8 rounds of shot link data. Yes, in those 8 rounds, he was an outstanding ball striker and a just like an atrocious putter. We're talking like a better ball striker than Rico Hoey and a worse putter than Rico Hoey. That's probably not sustainable for Ben James over a long period of time. Maybe it is. Maybe he is like maybe he is Rico Hoey on steroids, Kurt Kitayama on steroids in that way. But chances are he's not quite as good of a ball striker as we've seen, and he's not quite as poor of a putter as we've seen. And so when models are making an adjustment, they're overcorrecting and over-regressing the bad and not regressing the good enough. And so I think across the industry, he's probably pretty severely overprojected. That doesn't make him a bad play. He still seems like a very good, super talented young player, and maybe we're going to see some instant success from him. But just from like a modeling standpoint, that's like the mechanism of why he would be really overprojected.
People think I'm serious when it says, but maybe he's like the next Ludwig, which means you just come on, crush, and then suck on Sunday. That's what you do, right? But I will say, going back to it, and that was a great breakdown. But Smalley, who by the way shot plus 15 and did not make the cut, was the steam last week that just out of nowhere skyrocketed up to almost like 20% at some point in some tournaments, even higher for like single entry and stuff. So I think that's interesting. Bart had asked earlier, if you're building 60 lineups, could you disperse them into 320 max? Most certainly think that's fine. If you want a bigger, if you want to spread out your portfolio, I think that's always a way that you can go about it. If you're, trying just to say, hey, I don't care which one comes through, I just want to make sure something does. Yeah, it's more your portfolio that you're managing from that perspective. So let's just see.
The one thing I'll say on that real quick is my hesitance there would be, it's probably hard to find 320 max that are similar in terms of, in the amount that you have to invest into each lineup, the price point to get in for each lineup, because you don't want to add just this like purely random aspect of, did I happen to put the right set of lineups in the right contest, or did my best lineup go into a 25 cent when my worst lineups were all in the $5, and now I had one awesome lineup, but I still lost money. So typically I would say you want to decrease as much of the variance as possible, since we're already playing a game that there's so much randomness, there's so much variance. It's already a battle to decrease that variance and to actually recognize and realize our expected value. And so that's the biggest thing I'd look out for. If you can find 3 contests that are similar structure, similar entry points, and maybe one's like really big and has a high purse or is really top heavy, and now you can say, okay, what are my most volatile? What are my highest upside, highest risk lineups? Like that would actually work really, really well. But if you're just putting them in 3 different contests at various price points and you don't really have a system for choosing which one goes where, then I think it's a bad idea.
Bang. That's where I was jumping in and you did it for me. Perfect segue. It's like we have great chemistry now. That's the key that people miss. And I talk about this over at DFS Mastermind. It's a foundational piece of what you have to start off with. If you don't have any process for it, then yeah, to Alex's point, it's just, you're just like ramping up variance for no reason. And you could land in this type of position like Go Collect says. Imagine shipping the 25 cent when you could have won 6K in this. First off, I'll say, setting it up, we had this conversation a couple weeks ago with like the $100, the $200, and the $200. There's like those are more of this type of conversation. I know we're talking here 20 max and that's single entry, but the concept of like the $100 only 500 people, the $200 only 277 people, the other $200 is 1,300 people. You could and should have a process for that if you were doing this, taking this seriously, because like a 277 field is much different than a 1,300 person field, and you can figure it out. I've got great friends that play at the highest levels. And on Sundays during NFL, this is the best time because to Stats point, you can't say I'm worth winning, first of all, by the way, because your money is different than somebody else's money. Somebody else winning $100 off of 75 cents or whatever the amount is, a 75-cent tournament or the 50 cent, that's still massive, right? It's 100 into 1,000, it's 1,000 into 10,000, like to each their own. And I know you said not entry shaming, just noting it. You don't get to decide what's worth winning for somebody. But his point is that in golf, it is tricky to find these fields, to Bart's point earlier. So that's why I went to the single entry example. But in NFL, I have really good friends that do this every week. And I was in, I can't remember which one it was, one of the King of the Beaches I was at. And he played the $9 slant. He played the $40 150 max. Maybe it was like a 120 max or something, but it's the one that's like super balanced structure, but like every min cash is awesome because it still can boost it. And then he played the $20 Millie Maker. He won the he won the $40 for like 20K with a lineup that would have won the $20 Millie Maker. And he was not shook at all. It literally couldn't have been, there was no possibility that lineup set ends up in the $20 Millie Maker because the $20 Millie Maker has 200,000 plus people and the $40 had like 15,000 people or maybe even less. Honestly, it might've been like 8,000 or something. But the point was that's more advanced, but for most people playing, to your point, is like, you would have to look out for that stuff and think about it differently. That's why I brought up the single entry example. I'm bouncing around a little bit because that one, most people that are playing $500 and just want to play 3 single entries, any of those scores, back to Stats point, are going to be worth winning. So while it would suck to win, like again, we'll say would suck, it's probably or most likely somebody who has never even won $1,000 winning $5,000 instead of 30. Yeah, not as ideal. Like, it's 6 times less, but $5,000, pretty big score, off to the races, feeling good, finally found success, could have won you more elsewhere, but it's how you played it and you got to move on. So I think that's a good topic of just like thinking through it, getting a foundation, understanding that stuff. And then you never land in that spot. And we could go on for days, Alex, but I mean, I'm sure you think about this yourself, even playing when, typically playing single lineup in NFL as an example, late swap. Don't late swap just a late swap. Like you have to kind of late. Everyone knows it's a possibility, but it's like, why am I late swapping? What is my process? And because what you don't want to do is late swap today just because you feel, I got a feeling. And then next time it's like, well, I late swap because of projection. Well, I late swap because of risk or what. Like if you don't have a process for it, it's probably just a good idea just to leave it alone, right? That's my thoughts. Anything you want to add to any of that stuff? I want to chime in on all that.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. And the other thing I'd say is, I think there are 2 ways that you can do this. Like the first is you can build your lineups first and then say, okay, which lineup fits in which contest, or which lineup set fits in which contests. And then you can also say, okay, I've got these contests that I'm already in. Now I'm going to go build this one. And now I'm going to go build that one. And now I'm going to go build that one. And so you can do it either way. And that's probably a personal preference thing. I think like optimally you would do it the latter way where you're going one contest at a time and then building specifically for that contest. But I don't think you're going to lose a whole lot of, expected value and things of that nature if you're doing it the opposite way and you're building the lineups that you like first and then figuring out which ones they best fit into.
Yeah, love that call, man. We can happily move on here now. Where do you want to go next? I mean, like looking at the chalk build, I think, again, we've talked about this enough weeks now, but just to say it again one more time is like, to me, it's not about the select plays within it. Like I loved how you broke down, still got him up there, Benjamin James, and obviously he fits into that one version of it, but just noting it, the overall build construct is, 2 to 3 8K guys. And honestly, if it could get further in some, it could get, down from 3 to 2 in some, but I see 2 8K guys in most lineups here, which makes it pretty intriguing for the next segment, which would be sort of how to leverage that. So do you have anything else you want to add on the chalk build? If not, let's start talking about how we can leverage this baby up.
Yeah, I would definitely say that Benjamin James is probably not in the chalk build. So let's start. I think we actually want to start in the 8K range or with Tommy, but I would throw in Wrighton and Ryan Cole to start. I think that's how most people are going to start or something like that.
I feel like this is the starting point with even Tommy in there because again, it could be someone else, but my point is more like the Tommy version, because of projections, actually does want to put Ben James in there because you can just put Collie and then land on Ben James. It's a projection thing, like you explained perfectly. It's what I'm saying, though, is I don't think enough people know that or do it. By the way, there's going to be tons of people out there that are like, oh, Ben James is going to be chalk too. Yeah, like 4%. Like, who knows what he actually gets to and some of this stuff. But again, like 95% of the people don't even know who I'm talking about or who Alex was just talking about right now. So my point being, though, for the standard hand builders, which is what I'm using here over on the Stone 2.0 at Ship Nation, it's like you have very clearly right here, 7,300 per player left. Yes, I get Colley's popular, but like who else do you have in that mid-range? Is it going to be like Putnam, Finau? Like who were you seeing? Tom Kim? What are some of the names down here that you were seeing getting ownership?
Yeah, I think Finau, Yelamaraju, Grazerman, Putnam, Boshu, Tom Kim, maybe some with Homa, Suber, but like as you kind of just alluded to, we're not talking about, oh, these guys have a chance to be 20%. It's like these are the guys who have a chance to even get to 10%. And it absolutely will not be the case that they all do. Maybe two of these guys get to 10. Maybe one of them gets to 15 to 20, and that makes the others 5 or 6, something like that. And so there's definitely not going to be a lot of ownership down here because you just don't have to go down here very often. And when you do, like if every single person in the field were choosing between like the 7 to 7.4K range once or twice in their lineups, you'd still see very spread out ownership down here because there are so many guys and there aren't any who really stand out as the best plays. And so it like these guys just don't really have a chance to get a ton of ownership. I mean, just look at the number of players in the 8K range. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 11 guys in the 8K range. There are like, I'm just doing some quick math at the top of my head, like 43, 44 guys in the 7K range. Like that's a massive discrepancy. And so that's a big reason why the 8K ownership is concentrating so much more than the 7K ownership, simply because like DraftKings didn't allow a single player to be overlapped in price until $8,000. And then they have so many guys at 7.5, 7.4, 7.3, 7.2. So it's just a sheer volume thing, honestly.
Yeah, I couldn't find it from last week. I was looking for it while you were talking about it because it's going to, everything you said lined up for this one. But one thing I'm going to just go back to again, I feel like I have a good read on it. We'll see when numbers come out, like in the finale. Obviously, Scotty, I mean, our stuff, I know Fleetwood's going to go up and whatnot. But just in general, the 9K range, I just, outside of like, man, I don't want to just go too aggressive here, but outside of like Wyndham, I just don't know how these guys get. They'll get something. Yeah. Yes, they'll be like 10%, but there's a massive difference. Again, like I said it last week, but if you got Bobby Mack actually comes in at 10%, and then you've got Fleetwood at 30, like that's a massive difference. Oh, he's double digits though. Yeah, he is. He does happen to have a 1 and a 0 in front of his name, which is factually double digits, but that is not the same as a 3 and a 0 in front of your name in Fleetwood. I mean, that is still massive leverage in builds there, not just from the picks and plays perspective, but of like how the rest of the build could shake out and all of that. So I definitely got to think about this, but I can see Wyndham. Like even the other one, you said it earlier, and I don't know if I fully believe this either, but like, how does Nico go to 9,100? We know how he does. I mean, you particularly, and then me being beside you here, we've talked about it all season. Like your statement at the PGA Championship was, well, they've got a $6,800 guy that should be 8,000 plus. So there's the first issue. But he makes sense. Like to me, and what you're going to probably say is like, we know why he's 9,100. But I don't think the clickers out there want to be clicking $9,100 Nico when you can go to Wrighton, you can go to Fitzpatrick, you could even go to Noren, you could go above to Rose, Bobby Mack, Wyndham Clark, and then all of the 10K guys. I just don't know how these 10K guys or these 9K guys can actually get clicked.
I want to put in a formal request. I want Nikolai Højgaard to be Nikolai and Nico to exclusively refer to Nico Echeverria.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Thank you. It's the first thing that came to mind. And so I believe it was in the chat there earlier. Somebody said it, so I kind of stuck. But you are 100% correct, and I'm all about that game. So I love that call. Thank you for that. It's a good co-host here.
Yeah.
What do you think though on his ownership?
Yeah, I think he's in a range where like it should be capped because anyone who likes Nikolai this week, like what is pointing you to him now? It could be part of a distance stack. And so if there's a distance stack, it's harder to find that in the 8K range, at least among the chalk. Like, you're not going to go to Cole. You're not going to go to Rye. You're not going to go to Alex Fitzpatrick, but you still can go to Wrighton. You can go to Brennan instead. You can, you can pivot there. You're not going to go to Cauley. So you're going to land on different names, but in a distance stack, like, you can still get Nikolai. You can still get Wyndham Clark, things of that nature. So you can still play a lot of guys who are in form. But the other reason to land on Nikolai is because you're just playing guys who are playing really well this season. I know he hasn't played as well in the last few weeks, but so it's going to be hard, I think, for most people, though, to click Nikolai when you can go down a little bit and get Wrighton, Fitzpatrick, Rye, Cole, Cauley, or you can go up just a little and get Wyndham, who's like one of the hottest players on tour. You can go to Tommy, who's the best player in this field. You can go to Burns, who's playing really well. It's just that Nikolai's kind of in a no man's land. So I think that is going to keep his ownership in check. 15, 16, 17%, something like that. I'd be very surprised if he got to 25, but I'd also be really surprised if he was 10%.
Yeah, that's what I want to see. So that's why I feel like the 12 number might be correct, because enough people get to it. Like, there is this super chalk build that I wouldn't be playing myself, but just noting it because I don't mind. I'll throw it up there. But it's like, you still have what you said earlier. You've got the Wrighton, the Cole, the Rye. Put Cauley because we know he's kind of popping in the 7Ks. And, oh, look at me. I'm different. I got Nikolai and I got Nick Taylor. It's like, that's not very true. So there's that. But then there's like alternate universe of that, to your point. Oh, well, I'm going to get sneaky. I'm going to fade the 10K range. I'm going with this. Okay, plug in, whoever, Putnam or Pockgeiter or Finau or, Homa or whoever here. Like, no matter what, the 9K range just doesn't get – the 8K range doesn't ever go outside of 2 in every build we've looked at. The 9K range doesn't go more than 1 pretty much in any build we've looked at. So, I mean, I think we're moving on. But I do want to talk about it because, like we said earlier, there is some interesting stuff. If you went with just like the driving accuracy stuff, you could have like a Morikawa, Bobby Mack lineup. And that is already a couple things. And everyone knows this is when people confuse, like, oh, you're just clicking the most. Look, again, initial ownerships, but I can't imagine either of these guys get super popular, but you're just clicking them to be different. It's like, no, there's a couple things about it. We're looking now at a certain roster construction. We're looking at a skill stack. We're looking at how this actually fits the players around them. Like, Sam Burns could be 3X Colin Morikawa. I think it was our guy, Monday Dynamo, speaking of the ownership, said Morikawa might late swap him out of this tournament, late swap himself. We just saw him come back. I think it's like, I think Mayo was saying yesterday, maybe he finally had the kid, or I don't know if we got confirmation of that or whatever. But the point being, you could find guys to fit in this after this, and you don't even have to go in the 8K range. You could go like one 8K guy and drop down. You could add another. What if you do Wyndham and you use Wyndham to slice it? You slice and dice Wyndham by going one above and one just slightly below. Now you still have 7,000. If you don't do Wyndham, maybe this is where a Rose with 7,100 comes in, or back to Nikolai, like you talked about. Now you got 7,200. We named like 5 to 6 guys down there that you could easily go with, and they would all fit this build. 3 9s, 3 7s, and the 7K in a different range than most people are landing. You're not just landing on 7,400 or 7,800. You can't even, you're unlikely, you can, but you're unlikely to get to Bud Cauley in this. So what are your thoughts on something like a 2 or 3 9K lineup? I like it. It actually kind of gets right to a question that I was going to ask you. What are your thoughts on Hovland? Because I think, number one, like, you can group Hovland and Morikawa together in the sense that, like, these are 2 guys who are historically absolutely elite players with their irons. They're elite with their accuracy off the tee. Hovland's form hasn't been as good, so you can toss that out there. But at least with like Morikawa, we know he hasn't played since the PGA Championship because he was expecting a baby last week. And I assume he had it, because otherwise, why is he here this week? So there's that. Well, we assume Kat had it, but his wife. But yeah, definitely, most likely they had it. Yeah, gotcha. Hovland is weird because why in the world did he skip the Memorial to play in Canada? That I have no idea. But it was supposedly like, I can't imagine there was a world where he wanted that to be the outcome. It feels like, again, and we all know beware the injured golfer. I'm not saying that, but the back spasm piece that was out there, and then on top of it, it's like that would not be intentional, in my opinion. It's like, hey, would love to play Memorial and win Jack's tournament. Not going to be ready. Going to try and see what it's like going into getting prepared for the major the week after. I just got to see if I got it or not, but that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I am too, is like it seemingly can't say something good about where he's at physically, right? Because either it's like you said, he wasn't ready last week, now he feels ready, or it's he still isn't ready, but he feels like he needs just to get some kind of reps in before the US Open. But to me, that's confusing. It's like if I was really unsure about how physically ready I am, and I want to make sure that I can play the US Open and that I'm as prepared as possible, if I wasn't healthy enough to tee it up at Jack's place last week, there's no chance I'm flying to Canada to go try to play there instead of staying at home, getting whatever practice I can in at home, and making sure that I'm doing everything I possibly can to stay as healthy as I possibly can for next week. It's really odd to me. And like the numbers are telling me he's one of the absolute best plays of the week, that he's a good fit for the course. He's a good wind player, and he's going to be extremely underowned, at least relative to his like general talent level. And he also kind of fits the like, hey, we can pivot off of the chalk build by loading up on this low 9K range. I do really like Rose. You've kind of mentioned Bobby Mack a bunch already. I think you can also throw Brooks Koepka into that. I like Shane Lowry. He's a wind specialist. So like, this is a range that I'm really interested in. Everything about this play is like, this is an Alex Blickle special, but I don't think I can click him this week just because I have no confidence whatsoever in how he's doing physically.
That's right. And this is the hard part. It's like, if you didn't have any validation after all the good points that you made, it's like you did, right? That's where it would be, that would have more merit to me, but you're like, okay, I could get behind Rose. I could get behind McIntyre. I could get, we talked about Nikolai. We talked about you. I mean, you just mentioned Brooks Koepka. These guys just aren't getting played either. And to me, at least would have a little bit more, it's not about just like safety. It's like, I actually think it's like the potential for the floor ceiling is there. Vic has shown us like nothing. And now everything that you just said, at least with these guys, we've seen signs, and it wouldn't shock me if a Justin Rose or a Bobby Mack, and it wouldn't shock anybody for that matter, were in the mix and getting the job done. So you can still go with like the same theme, but end up on something like this, like Morikawa, Rose, Bobby Mack. And these are guys that could, find fairways, grind it out, make some putts, things like that. If that happens, I mean, you're not landing in a zone that anybody is landing in, yet all these plays down here still have a ton of projection value, right? Yeah. Like I'm sure there's tons of guys within the screen that you're seeing right now that you could say, okay, some of these guys would definitely fit what we're building out here. And there's just no way, because even when these numbers adjust some, you're going to have 3 guys under 10%. There's a chance that at least one, if not 2, again, it's a chance. Maybe they're the 10 to 12 range, but I'm just saying there's a high likelihood that, I'll say it this way, that all 3 of those guys on the screen on the build are under 15%. And there's a chance a couple of them are even under 10 slightly. So to me, it's not like too crazy or too wild. You're still building it accordingly. It's an upside construction. It makes sense for the course, like all those factors. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add on that one, but that was just the first thought that I had of like a way that you could go. And that's not what my lane is, but I definitely will have lineups like that and even some mains and stuff that I throw out there, because I think that's a definite way to find something that's unique, but not stupid.
Yeah, I very much agree. And I think regardless of like who your top players are in this range, you're going to find underowned guys. So whether you totally disagree with what we're saying about Bobby Mack, or you're with me in the sense that like you just can't make yourself play Hovland, this range, you can find somebody that you like, even if it's not the same guys that we prioritize.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. The other option that we talked about earlier, so it's not like a secret. And again, some people will land on this, but I will say it's somewhat interesting to me that it's definitely, when people go up here, going to be Fleetwood Burns with a bunch of the chalk together, as opposed to, I guess combo wise, I don't think you'll see, a Fitz Fleetwood as much. You know what I mean? Like, I think you'll see versions of this, or also people will lump Wyndham Clark into this. So you'll see like a Fleetwood Clark or something, or like a Burns Clark, maybe might even be even more popular. You know what I mean? As like a combo pack, obviously Fleetwood being the most popular, but just saying when people are comboing up, sometimes they also go by tee time, and you could see where Burns and Clark would go together if you were sort of doing that. So anyway, my point being, what are your thoughts on Fitz specifically? You asked me about Hovland. I want to go back to Fitz for a second, and then just building this way, because while you do land in the same range, there's a ton of options. I think you said it earlier, 43 guys down there. You could still get one 8K guy and then drop down from there as well.
He's not playing well, but he's still not playing poorly. I think the biggest issue that I have with Fitz right now is that the driving has fallen off, right? If it was just the putter, and the putter's been bad, and it was awful at the Memorial. If it was just the putter, it'd be one thing. But the driving, which was like from the Phoenix Open through the win at the Zurich, his driving was spectacular. He was gaining almost like a full stroke per round off the tee. Then he lost 0.8 per round at the Truist, gained 0.2 at the PGA, and lost 0.01 at the Memorial. So like this big advantage that he was creating for himself, he hasn't created since April 26th. That is a very real concern for me, because that's sort of what we saw as like the thing that really turned around last year, was that he found the low stinger off the tee that consistently put him in play, and he could always go to it every time he needed to hit a fairway. And that really unlocked the rest of his game. The nice thing is the approach play in there on the green play is still spectacular. I mean, his short game has to be among, if not the best in the world right now. And so I do like that aspect. If it does indeed play tougher this year, and we do actually get that like increased around the green signal. But I will note, surprisingly, Fitzpatrick is not that good of a wind player, right? Like I think of some of the hardest, windiest rounds of golf on tour in the last 5 years. And I remember Fitzpatrick being like the only guy with a great round that day a number of times, but he's been really volatile. He also has some absolutely horrific rounds in those windy conditions. So not quite as good of a wind player as I think most would think of when they think of Fitz. So something to keep in mind with him there.
Yeah, and that's always, something to look at. I think this is the other version I was looking at, is like the more popular version, I think, would be like a Fleetwood Burns. It does leave you 7,400. Do you have any just tips or advice? I mean, it's not about filling the lineup out. It's looking for ways to sort of leverage it and move up. But just from your perspective, you do land in a very popular range. Like you can still get Collie, you can get all the popular $7,400 guys. Like it's not like you're going to get that unique or different with it, depending, but you probably should, in my opinion, of just looking at it. Like there's so many options down there and so many ways that you can go. But is there anything that you would think differently when you're trying to leverage the chalk build with something where you're going double stud up top?
Yeah, I think like there are two main ways that you can do this. The first is that you'd say, okay, I can still now fit in Collie and Meissner, or Collie and Fox, or Collie and Cole. The problem then is, right, and the thought process that most would take if they made that pick is they'd say, and then I've got to go into the 6K range twice, so I don't have to worry about ownership because those 6K guys are going to be crazy low. The problem is now you're relying on like Kevin Roy or Lee Hodges or Ben James or Luke Clinton as your separators. And those guys are your least likely to have success. And they're by far your least likely to give you a top 5 or a top 10 outcome. So I think the better route to do this would be to say, now that I have 7,400 remaining for these last 4 spots or whatever it is, I'm just going to go hammer like 7.4K players, right? And there are like really underowned guys at each range, or maybe you go to a 73, a 74, a 74, and a 75, something like that. But that's going to keep you in a range where you're avoiding the chalkiest of the chalk plays. And so I would turn this type of build into a pivot away from the more balanced loading up on the 8K range type of builds. Whereas if you try to turn this into a lineup that accesses that range, now you're getting to really, really weak spots that you need to do well to actually create that separation for you. And they're far more likely to like totally destroy you than they are to get anywhere close to helping you the way that you need them to.
Yeah, and I mean, you're hoping that the 8K range almost fails in this sometimes. Yeah. And then on top of it, that's why you want those upside 7K guys that can get you out of there, where if the 8K guys are mediocre, well, those 7K guys are still helping them, but you've got, nothing different up there. If you go this way and just play different guys, I think that's fine. The other thing I wanted to see, though, just real quick was if you go like last one for me, and then we could sort of move on. Yeah, you can't. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but it just one way I was looking at it is like if you went something like this, let's just use this example. I think if I was using 2 6K guys, I'd rather it be in this way. Like, how can I play a Wrighton in a completely different way? It's only 1 8K guy. I'm just making this up. It's not the 3 that I like. We talked about these guys, but I'm saying at least then in the 2 6K build, it would only be 1 8K guy that you'd be relying on, the one that everybody's relying on. But you would literally, again, could you be in the 7K range? Yes, but it might be better off to find like a 69 and a 65 or a 68 and a 66 or something like that as just a way to play it extremely unique in this from this perspective as well. So yeah, I think that's good, man. I think we covered a lot of ways to sort of go through it. We'll get to our lanes at the end. Anything else you wanted to add there before we get to one and done?
No, I think you said that really well, and I'm in complete agreement that this is a better way to use that 6K range.
Yeah, lots of ways to use the different ranges based on those explanations. I think but what a lot of people will have to do here is decide at the top what they want to do, or if you have a really clean cut, like I only like these guys up top, well, then you can take a lot of what we just talked about and start to make those decisions down low. If you love the bottom, you could start to say, I'm going to lock in on these and then move it up from there and go that way.
It just changes what you're asking of that 6K range, right? Like you had 3 separators there who were around 9K. Like those guys have legitimate upside. And if those guys hit, if your separators hit, now what are you asking of those 6K guys? You're not asking them to help separate. You're just asking them to do decently well. You just hold that advantage that you just created for yourself in that 9K range. So I think that's probably like the easiest way to think about it, and is just what am I actually asking of these players? If those 6K guys are your only real differentiation from the field and you need them to be separators, that's not a good bet to make. If you just need them to finish 30th, 40th, now they're much, much, much better plays.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to one and done. What do we got for this week, and what are your thoughts as we go into this one?
I have no idea what we should do at this point. We are very much in trouble.
Yeah, we can't play the chalk, that's for sure. I know a lot of people still have this is one thing where it'll be different for everybody, but my main takeaway is like I was looking at the Mayo Cup today with my dad's choices and stuff and looking at that, and like everyone has Sam Burns and some of these bigger names there that they can use. So I think those guys will just be extremely popular. So it really comes down like if you're way behind, let's look for some leverage, hence the name Leverage Lane, and find our way to try and find our own lane versus using the same one everybody else is.
Yeah, I think the 3 most popular, I would guess, Burns, Wyndham, Wrighton.
Yeah, 100% on Wrighton, I believe, was the number.
Yeah. I've got a name that I'm going to hate myself for throwing out there because I don't think he can win because he's allergic to being near the lead. But Shane Lowry, with how ridiculously good he is in the wind, and the fact that I know I will never, ever, ever want to play him in an elevated event, I think he's a pretty good option this week.
I like that call quite a bit. I did bring it up yesterday talking to Mayo as well, and I know it's a totally different course and all of that, but he likes coming up to Canada, jolly old fellow, always having a good time. So I do like that of it, but nothing to do with that, obviously. I like the way you worded that, but realistically, that's where people need to remove their bias and things like that when it comes to it, because it's what you said. It's like, I feel really disgusting. He's probably not going to win, et cetera, et cetera. But like, if you play Burns and he does it, well, great. You got the same thing everybody else got out of him. It's like, you need to find a way to leverage that. You really want to hope for that outcome where it's like Lowry does, finish second or third, or maybe even somehow get it done. And Burns just doesn't do well at all. And you're now picking up real money on Lowry when nobody else knows or has any idea where they're going to get it from, or maybe even need him, and they get hurt by not getting much money out of somebody else. That's kind of the concept there.
Here's just to put some context on why it feels so gross. Think about, now Burns was actually decent last week when in contention, but think about how bad Burns has been in contention. Think about how bad Keith Mitchell has been in contention and Michael Thorbjornsen has been when in contention, and then realize that Shane Lowry is significantly worse in contention performance score than those 3 guys. So he like I said, I mean, he got within like 5 of the lead on Sunday after going birdie, eagle, and totally lost it. So you are absolutely running the risk of being 100% correct that he would play well and that he gets himself into contention and still walking away with like 14th place and nothing valuable whatsoever in one and done, because he just loses all of the advantage that he gains for himself. But in terms of like who's somebody that has a really good chance of getting into contention and isn't going to be a popular one and done pick, I don't think we can do any better than Shane.
Yeah. Also, I think it's interesting too, just like you're kind of looking for a perfect scenario of last week. Like let's have like a Poston Gerard playoff in Canada, like not those two, but like the version of that nobody is on in one and done. And you have like, Lowry was in contention, fell to third. That's what he does. It's like, okay, but I'll still take that, because as long as Burns and Fleetwood and Wyndham and Wright and guys like that don't win, I'll still have that opportunity and get something out of them from that perspective. So I like that call. We can go with him. Betting breakdown. I think you sent out a live one while you're here, but do you have anything you want to discuss live here?
Yeah, I did just send it out. We were talking about him. Actually, we were talking about the 9K range, and I was looking at Rose, and he was second tee to green last week. Like I had an outright on him last week. He should have won. He really should have. He lost 0.9 strokes per round putting, and we're talking about one of the better putters in the world, especially once in contention. And he was phenomenal tee to green. I love the way he drove the ball. He's a really good wind player. So I like everything about Rose right now. His irons have been spectacular all season. He started the year really good with his driver. He ran into some trouble with driver, like at Pebble, at the Genesis, and then really at API, he struggled with the driver, but he's gotten it back. He's hitting it further than he did in a few previous seasons, but significantly more accurate than he has in the last few years. So you put the rest of his game with improved driving. His short game's been awesome. His approach play's been excellent, and we know how good he can be with the putter. So I really like his outright. He's also, by the way, still one of the best contention performance scores and one of the most volatile event-to-event players. And so from just an upside perspective, like it's really hard to beat Rose. And for that reason, like we actually have him at 4.9% to win, tied for the best win odds in the field. And you can get him at 40-1 with Bet365's 1/5 each way for 3 spots. So that's my outright of the week. It's the only one I have so far. I might add to it, but I really, really like that one.
Yeah, that's didn't you have Rose earlier in the season?
Yeah, we had him at what was it, Torrey, that he won, and it was like just the easiest outright win of all time. It never got sweaty for a single moment. Hopefully he does that again, because that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is another thought as well too. Should be a good showdown week, I think, on there. And again, lots of satellites are going to be getting into that. I think Timmy Dubs asked about like Bridgman as a one and done. I'm fine. He's kind of outside the box a little bit too. Nowhere that I'd be hoping that save him for or anything like that. Mm-hmm. All right, leverage lane for the week, and I've got mine. I'm going to simplify it. Somebody said I told you earlier it wouldn't be this because I actually don't know yet what it's going to finalize, but I'm going to play no 8K guys in my single entry, not just to spite it. I just think we talked through like 3 to 4 scenarios where I don't require any. There is a scenario where one could work, like I said, but I'm going to commit to the bit because I think like in reality, I have like 3 or 4 different versions of what I'm looking at that require none of those popular 8K guys. And, every other week it's kind of been the opposite. So why not stick with it and go to the opposite side of that? What's your leverage lane for the week?
Mine's going to be just leaning into wind splits and guys who I think should play well in the wind. Like I said, the part about the course that I'm least confident in this week is just like what skill sets is it going to emphasize? Because we only have 1 year's worth of data and the conditions are going to be so different. So the thing that I'm actually confident in is it's going to be really windy and you're going to have to control your ball in this wind, both off the tee, especially with your approach play, being able to flight the ball, being able to turn the ball in both directions based on the wind. I do want to look at with a wind direction, like I said earlier, and how that actually affects par 5s mostly is, do I think a distance is going to be more predictive than it was last year as a result? But the one constant, the thing that I know is going to be true is guys who know how to play and know how to flight their ball in the wind, know how to make putts in the wind is also a big key. Like those are guys are going to have really good chance for success. Because a lot of the time when we talk about like, hey, it's going to be really windy this week, it's going to be windy Thursday and Friday. And so it's important to care about the wind to get to the weekend. Or it's going to be windy on the weekend, but it's not going to be windy on Thursday and Friday. It's going to be windy throughout every single day, all 4 days, it looks like. So you better have some chops in the wind. And I have a really kind of specific way of doing my wind split analysis where I don't just look at how much better or how well a guy does in the wind, but I reference that compared to his baseline. So who's playing better in windy conditions than in calm conditions? And then the other thing I like looking at is who gains strokes more often at a higher frequency in wind than they do outside of that. So it's not just about like, oh, this guy has been fine in the wind, but then he had one awful week in the wind, and consequently his like average is really bad, but he still gains more often than not. So all of that stuff will be in my Discord. You can check that out, but that's my leverage lane, is just kind of really leaning into that. And I think one like reason for doing that is because it's a hard thing for the average DFS player to do, because not everyone has access to that data. Not everyone knows how to actually use that data in a really productive way. They're just looking at, oh, who have been the best players in the wind? Fitzpatrick, Tommy Fleetwood, Sam Burns. Oops, this is just a list of who the best players are. So, finding those guys who are actually going to outperform their baselines, or conversely, who might underperform their baselines, is a really good way to do it. And that's going to be hopefully a path to success this week.
Yeah, someone's saying too, the Euros, and even Pat mentioned it yesterday too. It's like no American hecklers, or very few up in Canada. So maybe that's part of the cause as well. But definitely like that. You talked about your Discord, having that stuff. Let the people know about your Discord, where they can find you, and then we'll get out of here.
At Alex Blickle 1 on Twitter. You can find the Discord through there. I have noticed like people are struggling to kind of actually find how to subscribe. So when you click that link to the Discord, all you have to do is scroll down, and then you'll see the options, and you can use promo code leverage for 10% off forever. Every single time you get renewed with that discount. So go check that out.
Yeah, definitely get in there if you guys aren't already. I'll be looking out for the wind data later when you've got it. This, Hutch Dog says is it also going to be really firm? Windy plus firm could be super carnage. You could see who knows how it actually goes. The temps are okay, but I don't know. You seem like you got other thoughts.
So. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that firm, just because some of the wind is because there are storms in the area. So it looks like, I think they've had some wind, some precipitation already this week. It looks like they are going to have some overnight tonight, and then maybe some more on Friday. And then definitely it looks like storms on Sunday. So I don't think it's going to be crazy firm. I think it's just going to be windy.
Yeah. You guys can find me on X at ToeTagginTambo, and then over, of course, at ShipItNation.com. The all access special is up there. So you get your first month for just $49. That's access to everything across the board, including SaberSim. You get all the stuff that we talked about from the golf perspective for Showdown and for the main slate. We've got MLB, the new slate station, all the other sports that are going on right now into the playoffs and whatnot. But if you have any questions, you can just always reach out to me direct as well. That's going to do it for this one, guys. For Alex and for myself, ToeTagginTambo, good luck in your contest this week, and let's ship it.